Have you ever looked at your life and thought, everything is technically fine, so why do I feel like I'm running on fumes? And then, just to make things extra fun, you notice that your desire, your spark, your libido, your interest in intimacy has quietly packed its bags and left the building. No note, no warning, just gone. And suddenly you're wondering if there's something wrong with you, or your relationship, or your hormones, or your motivation, or your personality. But what if none of that is true? What if instead your desire has disappeared because your nervous system has been stuck in survival mode for so long? That is what we're talking about today. Welcome to Burnout-Free Me, your success and well-being podcast. I'm Dr. Amy Grimm, and I am so glad you're here. Let's go from burnout to breakthrough together. Hello, my friends. Welcome back to Burnout-Free Me. If you're new to the pod, hi. I'm really glad you found your way here. And if you're a regular, welcome back. You are listening to Burnout-Free Me, and this is episode number 139. I'm your host, Dr. Amy Grimm. I am a veterinarian turned certified success and well-being coach, and I help high-achieving, deeply capable humans stop running on empty and start living in a way that actually feels sustainable again. And today, we're talking about something that doesn't get nearly enough airtime in burnout conversations. And that is the connection between your nervous system and burnout and desire. Because here's what I see all the time, and I've also experienced this in my own life. And these are the kinds of conversations that happen behind closed doors, but rarely out loud. So you may notice that you are exhausted, you're overwhelmed, you're carrying a lot, and then you might start noticing that intimacy feels harder. It's like your desire is lacking. And even pleasure, like sexual pleasure, feels less accessible, and in some cases, disappears. And instead of getting curious, we usually go straight to self-judgment. So let's slow this all the way down, and let's talk about what's actually happening. When you're someone who is constantly on the go and is meeting the demands of your career and your life, you might start to feel busy or stressed. And you might learn to adapt and function in the sympathetic state, but over time, your nervous system becomes overloaded and your body no longer has the capacity to recover, no matter how much you rest, no matter how much time you take off, or tell yourself things like, you should be grateful. And then we can enter into this existence where the stress never really turns off. And because it's trying to protect you, your nervous system adapts. So this starts to feel normal, or like it's just what's to be expected. And so we end up stuck in a state of dysregulation, and more often than not, that is our sympathetic state of fight, flight, or freeze. Now, most people think of that response as something that happens when a bear is chasing you, which, true, that's what the system was designed for. However, for high achievers, high responsibility professionals, we can end up in this pattern where our threat response remains active and we remain vigilant all the time. And as a result, we can end up turning this response inward on ourselves because we start to incorrectly view ourselves as the problem, the thing that needs fixing. And I see this a lot in women and also in people who are well versed in personal development and growth. We are always trying to solve the problem by being very introspective and taking into account our role in the situation, which in many cases is helpful, especially when the problem is intellectual or logical in nature. But when the problem is actually beneath all of that, when it's baked into our biology and is part of a normal response to everyday occurrences, this type of thinking can end up amplifying the problem we're trying so desperately to solve. And as a result, we blame ourselves. So instead of fighting a bear, we fight ourselves. Instead of running away from danger, we run away from our own needs. And instead of freezing in the face of a threat, we freeze inside our own heads. And when this pattern shows up around productivity, it creates what I call the productivity trap. That's when we push harder, we criticize ourselves more, we overthink everything, and we keep going long past the point of capacity until we're exhausted. And that same pattern shows up in intimacy and desire. So when the fight response turns inward around sexuality, intimacy, pleasure, desire, it often sounds like a harsh inner critic. You might notice thoughts like, why don't I want this more? What's wrong with me? I should be in the mood, but I'm not. I should be enjoying this. Other people don't seem to struggle like this. And for high achievers, self-criticism can feel strangely safe because many of us were taught, explicitly or implicitly, that pressure creates results. Being hard on yourself will motivate you. Pushing through discomfort is how you succeed. So when your desire starts to fade, the instinct is to push, to force, to override your body and just do the thing. Check it off the list. This is something that is expected of a sexual partner, therefore, I should just do it. And then we wonder why the act of sexual intimacy can start to feel like a chore. Another thing we need to do to satisfy somebody else. And that's because desire doesn't respond to pressure. Desire responds to safety. And when we fight ourselves, we disconnect from our own sensations. So sex becomes performative. We do it to please our partner, and intimacy becomes another task to manage. And even if things look fine on the outside, like it looks as if you have a healthy, active sex life, it doesn't feel that way. Your body learns that this type of intimacy is not a place of ease or rest. So it resists it more. Now, we can also go into flight mode. The flight response often shows up as avoidance and shame. So you might stop talking about intimacy altogether. You could pull away emotionally and or physically. You might avoid asking for what you need or sharing how disconnected you feel. And then your partner might perceive this as you don't care. You don't want this anymore. Yet, that is not true. The truth is, you care deeply and you desire connection. But because your nervous system is already overloaded, vulnerability feels risky. And it also takes a lot of energy to even get yourself into a space where you could have a conversation. And on the other hand, avoidance creates the sense of perceived safety because if I don't bring it up, I won't disappoint the other person. If I stay quiet, I won't feel exposed. If I just meet my partner's expectations, maybe this discomfort will go away, or at the very least, I can feel less guilty about it because I'm fulfilling my role or my duty as a wife. But over time, flight only deepens the disconnection, not just from your partner, but also from yourself. You are hiding from your own needs and pretending it's okay. And then there's freeze. This one is especially sneaky for smart, thoughtful, analytical people. Because when desire disappears, we try to think our way back into it. We analyze, we ruminate, we replay conversations, we Google things, we wonder if it's hormones or stress or menopause or the relationship or something fundamentally wrong with us. And we believe that if we can just figure it out, we'll regain control. However, when we're frozen like this, it pulls us out of sensation and into our heads, which makes desire even less accessible. Desire and safety and intimacy, they live in our body. We have to create this felt sense of safety and connection in our bodies first if we ever want to reestablish that with someone else. And when we don't, we end up stuck in this loop, fighting ourselves, avoiding vulnerability, and overthinking everything while continuing to push through life on fumes. And when this is the pattern, your body responds by conserving energy more. So it further shuts down your desire and pleasure and wanting. And this is the part I really want you to hear. Low desire is not just something you try to push through or ignore. It is a signal. It's your nervous system saying, we don't have the capacity for more input right now. It's not that being in this productivity trap kills your desire. It's more that it puts a pause on it while your body tries to survive. And when we understand that, everything starts to shift. Because instead of asking questions like, what is wrong with me? We can start to ask questions like, what has my body been carrying for a long time? What do I actually need? In what other areas of my life am I lacking capacity? How might I start meeting my needs in those areas so that I have more capacity and energy and space for desire and pleasure to return sexually. And instead of forcing intimacy, we need to focus on restoring safety. Instead of pathologizing ourselves, we need to respond with compassion. Intimacy requires emotional safety and physical safety and enough internal space to feel. And being stuck in the productivity trap, running on fumes, and going through these cycles of burnout quietly erodes all of that. So if you're listening to this and wondering whether burnout might be affecting your desire, I encourage you to get curious. When was the last time you felt truly restored? When was the last time you felt truly resourced? What about when you slow down? Do you feel relief? Or does your anxiety get louder? You can ask yourself, does intimacy and sex feel nourishing? Or does it feel like another obligation? Do you feel connected to your body's signals? Or are you mostly living in your head? And here's one of the biggest things to question. Have you been overriding your capacity for a long time? We become depleted when we continue to function in overdrive, when we keep checking off boxes without checking in to see if our bodies can even support the output. And when you're someone who cares deeply about your work and your responsibilities and your goals, it can be easy for intimacy and desire to fall by the wayside. You may even start to view your partner's sexual needs and desires as demanding or needy or just another thing that is getting in the way of you completing your to-do list. And that is never a healthy or happy place to be. So that brings me to one simple tool you can start using this week if any of this is resonating. I call this a capacity check-in, and it only takes about 30 seconds. It's something you can do anytime during your day. You can do it as you get out the car, before you open an email, when you close your laptop, when you're brushing your teeth. Just pause and ask yourself, how much capacity do I actually have right now? Not how much you should have, not how much you wish you had, just what is true right now. Low, medium, or high. Keep it simple. And then respond accordingly with compassion and kindness. And ask yourself, what do I need in this moment? The skill you are building is learning to listen sooner, before your body has to start shutting things down to get your attention. And when you start honoring your capacity, something interesting happens. Your body feels safer. There's less bracing, less resentment, less forcing. And that sense of safety is the foundation for real rest, connection, and eventually the return of desire. Because you're no longer fighting your body. You're listening deeply. And when you can start to reconnect with yourself, you expand your capacity to start reconnecting with others. In this case, your partner. Remember, your body is asking for care before connection. That is how you reopen the doors to pleasure and sexual fulfillment and desire. Okay, my friends, thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And if this episode made you feel seen or relieved or a little less alone, that matters. You absolutely deserve to live a life of sexual fulfillment and nourishment. It is a basic human need. And until next week, take care of yourself, and I'll see you soon.